So we're going to carry on with the SDK. This is the last one we have for today, I think. Yeah, it is the one. It's the one about Golang. And presenting to it will be aeternity's Golang SDK developer. Surprise. He's holding a bachelor's degree in engineering physics and is an experienced web developer. And it's Andrew Chiw. Please give him a round of applause, guys. Thank you.
Hi, people. Oh, let me press F5 first. My name is Andrew Chiw, and I assume you're here to find out how to use the Go SDK. I've got about half an hour for this, but unfortunately, I've written in such a way that you should be able to get it in 10 minutes. So let's get started. If you're doing anything with aeternity, I think the cycle is always the same. First, you create a transaction. I've got some code that helps you create a transaction there. Then you sign a transaction. And then you broadcast the transaction. And recently, I've combined the signing and the broadcasting and the waiting until the transaction has been out of the mempool and into a block. It blocks until, this new little function here, it really has saved me a lot of time. It blocks until the transaction has been included in a block. Oh, I didn't mean to make that a pun. But actually, I get a lot more questions about how to set up the Go SDK instead of how to use it. So let's just set things straight. The Go SDK uses Go modules, and this means that whenever you import it, you really need to put the major version there. Otherwise, you would just import a very old version of the Go SDK. If you do not like this, go to your Go path, you go get it, then you go get the Go SDK, and then you go into the directory and you delete the go.mod and go.sum files. Then you can drop the v5 from the imports in your package. But it doesn't, otherwise, it does not matter whether your project uses Go modules or not. You will mostly have to include the major version in your import. So to help you do all this transaction creation and signing and broadcasting, we have a very huge package called aeternity. It includes everything. Over here, we have the transaction structs. These are like models for the transaction. We have the connection to the node and the compiler, and we have the functions which are useful for a user of the Go SDK. These ones you have already seen before. This load account from key store file, as you can imagine, it loads the account from a JSON file that you have stored on your disk. Let me explain more about the context and why this is important. When you are creating a transaction, you always have to specify, this is the sender, and his account nonce is this. And how are you going to find that out? You maintain a connection to a node, and you keep asking the node what the account nonce of this sender is. And you do not want to do that all the time, which is why the context thing has a couple of closures that do that for you. You tell it which address is going to be creating these transactions and signing them later. And it will generate the appropriate closures and do all the hard work of figuring out the TTL and the account nonce for you. So there's a code example. Please, before you start doing anything, make sure you are on the correct network ID. Otherwise, you'll be very frustrated. And then you create a new context from a node URL. and you tell it the address that we'll be sending transactions from. You can tell it to output debug information or not to the standard output. It will give you the context object, and it will give you the node instance that this context object is actually using. You create the transaction, and then once you have the transaction, you just put it straight into this huge sign, broadcast, wait transaction, which will do all the hard work for you. And you tell it to wait, well, maybe for 10 blocks. And it will block. And when it returns, you will know that your transaction is included. So that's basically how you do it. It's the same thing for oracles, although, of course, there's a lot more stuff going on here. You create a context. You specify the oracle address. You make an oracle out of the oracle address. You query it. Oh yes, the oracle probably should not be querying it itself, but there you go. And the oracle responds to itself. So yes, sending transactions is now rather simple. But really, we don't want to care about transactions. I assume as a user of the Go SDK, you care about getting your job done, which is not making transactions. It's just a roadblock on the way. The JavaScript SDK already has this, and the Python SDK already has this, but the Golang SDK does not have something as simple as this yet. So this is what I'm going to develop. And making oracles needs to be much easier. The current vision is you code this function up here, and then you wrap it in an oracleizer, which will turn whatever this thing returns with into an oracle response transaction. But that is really, really far in the future. For the moment, there is a lot of cleaning up to do. At the moment, whenever I change something, the documentation is out of date, and then I have to go and do it again. This really needs to be all streamlined, all integrated. And recently, I spent a week away from the code, and then I found that I even forgot some things about the code. So that's really not cool at all. I think if I split it up into smaller modules, I will be able to reason about it more effectively, and then, yes. So this is the nearer vision for the future. As you can see, the transaction structs will be in the sort of models package. There will be the net stuff is all neatly in a net package, and the user-facing stuff will be in the aeternity package as normal. Oh yes, so now that you've heard all that there is to hear about the Go SDK, now you can hear a bit about me. I'm Andrew Chiw, I'm Malaysian, my hobby is computers, I dance a bit, and I also design mindsets. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Right, questions? That was quick. No? Yeah, okay, we have one. Thank you. Thank you, Robert. Saving the day.
Thanks for the presentation. It's good to have ongoing work on the Go SDK. So how much work do you think it will take to go, and what will be the next challenges? How do you see the updates flow of the Go SDK? I mean, so you showed a little bit of the vision, and so what will be the next challenges with this vision, and what do you think about integration of this sidechain channels?
Okay. So basically, how long will it take to that vision? Yeah, that is interesting. I am thinking of doing it the cleanup of the code and the implementation of the vision is not something I can actually integrate into a do it as you go along kind of process. But yes, what I really need right now are people to use the Go SDK and provide feedback to tell me if this vision really is. I mean, it could look neat up there, but it doesn't really work in real practice. Yeah, I think cleaning up the code would probably be like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that, and we could start brainstorming on the future vision of how it would work. And as for state channels, wow, I have to. State channels are a lot of work to implement in the Go SDK. I cannot even get a reference RLP serialization of a transaction straight from the node.
Okay, round of applause to Andrew. Thank you. Thank you.